Sup, G? We're joined by Tony Park, United youth expert, to talk about all things Manchester United related in terms of youth team football and how our new manager will affect that. Let's start with the obvious question though. Tony, what do you think about Louis van Gaal and what he'll bring to the club?
I think what he'll bring is a winning mentality. People were either for Moyes or against Moyes, and I think that's been sort of done to death. What we've got here is a manager who has incredible clarity about what his vision is and his philosophy is. And when you're talking about leadership, that's the sort of thing that you want to see in a manager. So he's got clarity about what he wants to see on the football pitch. He's got clarity about how he wants players to play. I think any of the players who don't go along with that philosophy will see the door of the club very, very quickly. And I think the young players are going to get a chance to say, let me show you what I can do. And he won't have any favourites. He won't, look at who's got the most caps or who scored the most goals. He'll put into play who he thinks can win a football match.
Excellent. So talking about youth team football, Louis van Gaal made it very clear in his first press conference that he is here to look after the first team. What kind of effect do you think that'll have on the under-21s and the teams below?
I think it's actually going to be closer than a lot of people think. I think when Van Gaal made that statement, he was probably talking about the real junior academy levels. When I saw the 18s play at Trafford in midweek, they played three at the back, for example. And I think that someone like Warren Joyce will be under very strict instructions from Van Gaal to play a similar system, simply so that some of the youth players who are coming through, like Wilson, Reese James, who's on the tour, Jesse Lingard, and perhaps one or two others, they can slot very easily into the first team system, and therefore they should be playing at least under 21 level.
So Tony, you touched on the tour then. There's a lot of young players in the tour squad. Louis van Gaal wouldn't have known about these players, would he? So who do you think selected them in the first place?
I think Van Gaal will certainly, even when he was with Holland in the World Cup, he would have been getting updates from the likes of Giggs, from the likes of Warren Joyce, and perhaps one or two others. He would have had an idea about, who was to be fast-tracked. He would have an idea about, Tom Lawrence and James Wilson making their debuts late last season. He's certainly up to date with those players. What would have happened is when he arrived at the club in that week where he had that week at Carrington, he would have looked at some certain people and then got some advice, obviously, and said, who can we take?
So why do you think Tom Lawrence and James Wilson aren't on the tour?
Well, James Wilson broke his finger, and so as a consequence, he was on the list originally. He was going to go on tour, but when he broke his finger, he had to do non-contact training and non-contact activity. So when Van Gaal put the list together, it was simply, well, he's not ready. He won't be ready for a couple of weeks. Tom Lawrence, I don't know. He could well have had a knock, or maybe Van Gaal felt that we had enough players in that certain position that he wasn't going to be getting any games, just simply sitting on the bench.
So talking about Reese Hammond, did he surprise you with his debut?
Reese Hammond.
Reese Hammond.
Yeah. I think I think Reese is going to get labelled with that for some time now. Watching Reese last year, he's probably one of those. He reminds me very much of Dennis Irwin. He's the sort of lad you get 8 out of 10 from every single week, and it was no surprise that he was taken on board simply because of his experience. I think what has been surprising is in the first game, as he did so well. He's never scored a goal for us before, so to notch 2 in his first ever first team appearance, will give him enormous high and enormous confidence. So I think he's certainly one to watch, and Van Gaal thinks so too when he made the after-match interview where he said, he's very talented, he listens very well, and I think Van Gaal likes that from young players. Some young players are willing to learn and willing to put it into practice.
So in your opinion, should we be searching for another left back, or do you think we've got it with Luke Shaw and Reese Hammond?
I think that, you guys know this just as much as most fans. I think that the step up from under-21s to first team is enormous. So with Luke Shaw, his pedigree in the Premiership, he's played for his country. So I think he's going to be our number one left back. That's fine. I think what Van Gaal's really doing is to say, do we have a quality left back in the reserves, if you like, or do I need to go out and buy another one? And I think that's what he's trying to check out at the moment. And I think it's up to Reese, Tyler Blackett, Varela or Vimil, if they can impress, to show that, we don't need to go into the transfer market. I am good enough to step into this position. Unfortunately, you never know this, of course, until you put them in action. I'm looking forward to the League Cup this year, more than probably any other season, because I think this will really dictate the young players that Van Gaal has an eye on and those that he just doesn't rate at all.
Okay, Tony, we're hearing lots about Greg Dyke and his mad B-team league. What's your opinion on it? Do you think it would work?
Yes, it would work. There's no doubt about that. Having a league of Manchester United players playing in League One or League Two or the Championship, whichever league you wanted to go in, I think would be a fantastic move. I think the danger then is you'd obviously have Chelsea, Arsenal, and these other teams doing it as well. so as a consequence, does it then just turn into an under-21 league again, mixed in with half a dozen other clubs? So I think that needs to be ironed out. But the biggest issue is that the history of football in this country and the culture of football in this country is very, very dissimilar. It's very different to Italy and Spain and what have you. And I just don't think it would work. You've got some pedigree teams in the Championship with hundreds of years of first division experience and culture and history. I would find it very hard for the Football League to sanction any B team. I just couldn't see it happening.
Okay. Final question, Tony. Do you think things are looking brighter this year than they were this time last year?
I think that's a terribly hard question. I think
that's what I'm here for.
I think optimistically, people think so because they've got more confidence in Van Gaal. I think that's a big plus. I think from a youth perspective, it was simply I don't know. Moyes was very unhappy with certain things in the youth setup last season, and he was talking about change. And interestingly enough, Van Gaal's come in and said exactly the same thing about the ground, about some of the conditions the players are playing in, the surface that they play on, the tactics they employ. So he's also seen some things that he'd like to change. I think Van Gaal said I'm here for 3 years. That's always disappointed me. I always like a long tenure. However, we offered Moyes 6 or 7 years, whatever it was, and that didn't work out. So maybe the philosophy is we'll give you 3 years and see what happens. I think the fans are happier.
I think we're all happier generally. Tony, thank you very much for joining us. Everybody watching this, Tony Parks is on Twitter. Get involved because he'll be updating everything on the World Milk Cup and all things United at sort of under 21s and lower down level. Is that right, Tony?
Cheers, guys. That's right.
You're welcome. Cheers. And subscribe, like, and share the video. Boom.